for the benefit of the witnesses and the members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either Floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed to the chair. And with that, I would like to welcome our witnesses for this second panel. We are joined today by Federation for the Humanities and Social Sciences, represented by Karine Morin, President and Chief Executive Officer. We are also joined by Tech Access Canada, being represented by their Executive Director, Ken Doyle, and also we have University of Toronto being represented by Professor Timothy Chan, Associate Vice President and Vice Provost Strategic Initiatives. So welcome to all the witnesses. Thank you for appearing before the committee. And all of you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go into a round of questioning, and we will begin with Ms. Morin. You have the floor, and you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Please go ahead.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, et bonjour, chers.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Karine Morin, President and CEO of the Federation of the Humanities.
And social sciences through advocacy, capacity building, and knowledge exchange. Our membership spans 76 post-secondary institutions, 66 scholarly associations, representing a diverse community of 90,000 researchers and graduate students in Canada. J'ai eu le plaisir de comparaître devant le comité.
I was pleased to appear before the committee to contribute to your work on the overarching organizational framework and research excellence. Today, I would like to once again share my observations from the perspective of our disciplines, as well as my personal experience with various funding agencies.
For both intramural and extramural research and innovation to be well governed and accountable, the science policy ecosystem must be guided by fundamental principles. In Canada, these principles are well established and a core strength of our system. Research is conducted ethically and with integrity, and I note that the relevant Tri-Council policies uphold international best practices and undergo periodic reviews. Assessment of research proposals should be carried out fairly and by experts, and it is. Our peer reviewers act neutrally, they disclose their conflicts of interest, are trained to avoid unconscious biases, and again, these are the practices that are put forward by the research councils. Furthermore, our agencies are at the forefront of assessing questions such as whether the pool of applicants is representative of the population, and also whether certain groups perform better than others within given applicant pools. For example, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, SSHRC, produces detailed and publicly available dashboards, and they do so because the federal government made it a policy. Assessment of funding programs should be transparent, accountable to government and the public, and it is. Research Council's funding programs undergo rigorous public evaluations that assess relevance, efficiency in delivery, and whether objectives are fulfilled. I'd say, as an example, a very comprehensive 2024 review of support for research training and talent development. Now let me turn to opportunities for improvements, which we must seize as we mobilize research and expand our understanding of its value. I first want to note the rapidly evolving field of meta-science, which heavily relies on data. As you heard previously, the Research Council's legacy systems currently present challenges. However, a new grant management system is being implemented and should eliminate some of these difficulties. Nevertheless, researchers are able to make data requests and to obtain such data to answer some research questions. Nevertheless, clearer mechanisms could be implemented to support data requests from researchers, to make these data requests publicly listed, as well as the relevant findings or related publications. And these improvements should be an important part of a capstone organization. Furthermore, what is most needed is a clear mandate to assess strengths and gaps in our science policy. This should be embedded in the long-awaited Advisory Council on Science and Innovation and in the national strategy that is called for by Chief Science Advisor. Finally, the key question is really whether we are measuring the full benefits of federally funded research or relying on narrow assessments that value only certain types of research that mostly benefit private firms rather than communities. Measures need to be extending beyond tech transfer, patents, or spin-offs. Personally, I'm not convinced that I need another app on my phone. To broaden the assessment of the value and impact of research is to establish a new contract between science and society, one that recognizes social innovation, supports research to be spread and scaled to benefit health, social resilience, adaptability, cohesion across our communities, to restore greater trust in our institutions and preserve our sovereignty. As we anticipate policies that will set mission-driven research, we must ensure that it will remain human-centered. En résumé, la Fédération estime que le gouvernement...
In summary, the Federation believes that the government already has several mechanisms in place to identify necessary improvements. The Federation does not believe it is necessary at this time to create an independent body or function for monitoring, analysis, and accountability. However, we must improve our assessments of the value and impact of research in order to improve Canadian science policy for the benefit of all. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. And with that, we will now proceed to Mr. Ken Doyle, Executive Director for Tech Access Canada. Please go ahead. You will have 5 minutes.
Well, thank you for the invitation to join you again this afternoon. Tech Access Canada is our national network of technology access centres that work directly with Canadian companies to help them adopt technologies, develop prototypes, validate innovations, and move new products and processes into real-world use. Our centres focus on solving practical innovation challenges faced by small and medium-sized companies by providing access to highly specialized equipment and applied R&D and commercialization expertise that help translate promising ideas into usable solutions that people will pay for. Our non-dilutive support lets companies retain 100% of the IP and subsequent profits. Over the past 5 years, more than 28,000 innovative Canadian companies have worked with our network, trusting our centres to help them improve productivity, adopt new technologies, and bring innovations to market. One of our health tech centres has supported nearly 500 companies over the past 5 years and helped develop or improve more than 400 products and services, strengthening our digital health sector with Made in Canada innovations. From our perspective, Canada's innovation ecosystem is not lacking in inspiration. My friend Dr. Chan from the University of Toronto will speak to how Canada already punches well above its weight in breakthrough and interdisciplinary research. One of the consistent challenges identified, both in Canada and internationally, is translating knowledge into adoption to generate real economic and societal value. That is precisely where our centres operate. One of our Ontario centres helped a small company validate a proprietary predictive maintenance technology that uses smart sensors to detect equipment failures before they happen, helping them grow to $5 million in global sales and creating 7 new jobs in Ontario. We work at the stage where novel technologies must be tested, adapted, prototyped, and validated in real-world operating environments, steps that are often difficult for smaller companies to do without in-house R&D capacity. In other countries, researchers describe themselves working with national government research organizations. In Canada, we far too often hear these relationships described as funder and award recipient. Strengthening that working with dimension, connecting researchers, companies, and national-scale infrastructure like our centres and the National Research Council can help ensure we translate more research into real-world outcomes. At the same time, it's important to recognize that not all research outcomes are commercial in nature, and Canada's strength depends on a broad and balanced research ecosystem capable of supporting adoption and deployment. Our work complements longer-term research investments by helping ensure that emerging knowledge and technologies are actually used by companies, in the economy, and in communities. One of our centres in Western Canada partnered with northern communities to design high-performance buildings, achieving a 41% reduction in annual emissions while creating shared data to guide future infrastructure decisions in those same communities. The Technology Access Centre model has now been operating nationally for more than a decade and has been studied internationally, including by the OECD, as an example of applied research infrastructure that supports and enables firm-level innovation and technology adoption. Today, the network includes 70 centres across the country operating under a common, proven model. Demand is strong, the model is well understood, and the results are consistent. In that sense, this is not a concept or a pilot. It is proven infrastructure that is already delivering outcomes at scale. A clean tech company approached one of our centres to develop an automated solar panel recycling system. We helped them reduce manufacturing emissions by 33% while also helping them recover valuable materials for reuse in their core product. At a time when there's strong focus on evidence and measurable outcomes, independent economic analysis using StatsCan data examine the performance of firms that collaborate with technology access centres. That analysis found that small companies working with one of our centres experienced substantially stronger growth in both sales and employment than comparable firms that did not. On average, small firms saw employment growth of 70% and increased sales of more than 140% following their engagement with the Technology Access Center. These firm-level outcomes, measurable, real-world impacts that reflect companies adopting technology and creating wealth here at home. As you consider questions of governance, accountability, and effectiveness within the science and innovation ecosystem, we offer a simple observation. Strong outcomes depend not only on how research is funded, but on whether it is ultimately used. Canada has a diverse and capable research ecosystem. Ensuring that it delivers maximum benefit requires increased attention to adoption, deployment, and scale. Our centers are designed to operate in that space, working shoulder to shoulder with companies to translate capability into impact. We're a proven national network with a consistent model trusted by thousands of companies each year and delivering measurable results. The infrastructure exists, the demand exists, the results are measurable. We're well positioned to do even more. And my parents raised me to be an optimist, and I think the future is bright. Thank you. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Professor Chan for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hello, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. My name is Timothy Chan, and I am the Associate Vice President and Vice Provost for Strategic Initiatives at the University of Toronto. In that role, I am responsible for the identification, assessment, prioritization, and support of large-scale, excellence-driven, interdisciplinary research initiatives. Our institutional strategic initiatives, or ISIs, cover areas including AI, robotics, energy, and infectious disease. They tackle global challenges and catalyze collaboration across disciplines. I am also a professor in the Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering. My research focuses on the development of novel optimization models to solve decision-making problems in healthcare, medicine, transportation, and sports. Mirroring the focus of my administrative role at the university, my research program is deeply interdisciplinary and has been funded by a variety of sources, including NSERC and CIHR. I'm here today representing the University of Toronto, which, according to the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, is the number 21st ranked university in the world, the 10th amongst public universities, and number 1 in Canada. In 24-25, U of T and our hospital partners secured approximately $1.5 billion in research funding, with about a third coming from the granting councils. How does this funding translate into impact? In the last 5 years, we've published close to 70,000 scientific articles that have been cited over 1.4 million times. More than that, this research lays the foundation for industrial innovation. Last year alone, we supported close to 700 startups, generated over 100 patents. In 2025, PitchBook named U of T Canada's top university for producing venture-backed entrepreneurs. Every year, we engage industry partners in over 200 joint R&D projects. Our reputation is also a magnet for international talent attraction. The most recent example comes from the Canada Impact Plus Research Chairs program, where U of T and our partner hospitals received nearly 1,000 applications from international scholars eager to join us. I'll provide this information to the committee as context so you know how my research and institution shape my thinking around interdisciplinarity. Historically, the way much research has been within disciplinary boundaries, and we have done well in this regard. However, societal grand challenges that we are faced with are increasingly requiring an interdisciplinary approach. Wicked problems require wicked approaches. Mission-driven priorities require focused support and coordination to ensure that strategic goals are met. The granting councils provide a critical foundation for our national research ecosystem. Canada must leverage this foundation as it contemplates how best to invest in new mission-driven and strategic priorities, whether through a capstone agency or other mechanisms that provide an extra layer of coordination and support. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will start our round of questioning, the first round of 6 minutes each, and we will start with MP Mahal for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for attending for this important meeting today. I would like to start with Ken Dole. One of the reasons is that you come from a platform that is corely related to the outcome, not just rhetorics and what other institutes are doing. You come from where you can see the results. You offer results to the companies, provide solutions, and make them bring them to a platform or to a stage where they can commercialize, or where they can make real use of Canadian dollars. So my question I would want to start is, after a decade of liberal innovation policy and billions in spending, would you agree that the system is overly focused on academic research and government announcements rather than on delivering real-world results like commercialization, productivity, and firm growth?
Well, I think all the structures are in place. They're just from time to time there becomes issues with connective tissue between them. So the top of the funnel, the input, the basic discovery research, where we are a world leader, absolutely we should be proud of that. The translation piece into products, processes, services that people will pay for is where there's a bit more balancing that may need to happen, and we stand ready, willing, and able to do it. Then demand is definitely there. It's the enabling mechanisms where we may need a bit more support.
That's right. Would you agree that Canada's innovation system is designed around the needs of institutions and administrators rather than the needs of businesses trying to bring products to the market?
Not sure if I can speak eloquently to that one, where our centers are connected to post-secondary institutions across the country. For them, the challenge is operating effectively as a small business inside a public institution, where there's quite a bit of bureaucracy to deal with, and sort of inhibits their ability to really maximize their potential. But they still, 40 hours a week, every year, they're out there grinding, helping these companies turn really innovative ideas, get it through the benchtop scale to the pilot scale, and then into a product that can be scaled up and commercialized and create wealth here in Canada.
Thank you again. Mr. Diol, you have demonstrated strong private sector encouragement and engagement. Does that suggest that applied research model like yours are better at crowding in private investment than traditional academic streams funding?
Well, no, and thank you for the question. I mean, we work with 6,000 private companies a year, but we also work with 980 other partners like universities, government labs, those kind of public institutions, where we're partner agnostic. We're assessing the novelty of their innovation challenge, and are we in position to help? I think one of our true strengths is our ability to be objective with our clients and partners. And if the idea doesn't have, technological merit or commercial potential, we'll tell them to stop right now, stop dumping money into something that's probably not going to be successful, pivot, and then try a different approach. And I think that that objectivity, that cost avoidance is part of our secret sauce that makes us a trusted partner to so many thousands of companies every year.
And from your perspective, does the federal government have any credible way to track whether taxpayer-funded research is actually producing economic returns, or is the taxpayer writing blank checks without measuring outcomes when it comes to, especially when you have to relate the research with the commercialization, with industrialization, so that Canadians can see real value in their dollars that are being invested on the research side?
It's another very nuanced question, thank you, where we're in sort of a weird space where we operate in the innovation ecosystem, where we don't invent anything on one end and we don't invoice for anything on the other. So we're sort of an intermediary. And another element of our secret sauce is giving the client 100% of the intellectual property to commercially exploit. And the trade-off there is we have no hook into them later on to figure out, did they commercialize, did they create wealth, did they sell out, what happened to that innovative IP that we helped advance along the technology readiness levels. And so unfortunately, I'm unable to really speak to that concretely.
That's sad, isn't it? Despite all the spending, we are still not seeing results. That's a policy failure, in my opinion. Is it fair to say that system is built for institutions, not for Canadian businesses, based on your experience, as I said previously?
Well, I think it is important that we acknowledge programs like the Industrial Research Assistance Program at the National Research Council, which does help thousands and thousands of companies every year, and it even has industrial research in its name. So that's a very effective model. I've been a fan of the patent box model in other countries, where when a company creates some intellectual property and patents it, future revenues are almost protected from taxation stuff if they do grow and commercialize here in Canada. And I think that may be something that the country may want to explore in a bit more detail.
When it comes to SMEs, smaller firms, they face bigger barriers to adapting and scaling new technologies. After years of liberal programs and promises, are SMEs still left behind by a system that is too complex, too slow, too disconnected from their needs? If you can elaborate.
Time is 3 seconds left. So
If
maybe
you can provide a written answer.
maybe we can come in the second round, so we have time, 35 minutes more to go. So now we will proceed to MP Deschamps-Thériault for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, merci.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our three witnesses. My first question is for Ms. Morin, and I'd like to know, why is it important that we consider the perspective of social sciences in our work on governance and for the accountability of federal policy in science? So why is this perspective important, and do you have any things in particular to bring to our attention on this subject?
Je crois qu'on a tendance, en parlant de science,
I think that when we talk about science and technology, we tend to think about engineering and natural science. We forget about the humanities. And I'll give you an example of COVID, which we know that researchers in the biomedical field did their work in a year. They were able to produce a vaccine, but the pandemic continued on for a number of years afterward. Why? As a result of factors pertaining to human behavior, or factors of different communities, and things to do with our healthcare system. All of these other factors, which were not biomedical factors. And so if we take a look only at how to resolve a complex problem like pandemics, and if we only focus on questions of biomedical research, then we may end up in the same kind of problem where we'll come up with a biomedical solution, but we won't have a solution for communities, for people, for our society. And so in your presentation, you spoke about one possible way to improve things would be to better assess the impact of research funded by the federal government. So if I understood correctly, we need to expand the criteria to assess the impact on Canadians. How would you see this happening? Thank you for the question. This was the purpose of my presentation. I was saying that we're not focusing on these things. A lot of the research that we fund, and we do so for good reason, involves social sciences and humanities, but we aren't too concerned by their impact. And so it'd be better to be able to understand the effect of this research on people, on communities, on our society, on our institutions. And so these are assessment measures that haven't been developed within our ecosystem, and I would say that this is not the case in other countries. When it comes to science and innovation, we tend to focus a lot more on economic questions or technology questions, and sometimes we forget things to do with the values of our society and the impact on people, communities, and our society. Do you have any examples on what that could look like, the criteria that, how could we better incorporate them? Well, the simplest example I could provide, and thank you for the question, has to do with healthcare. We understand that it's not just a question of finding solutions for illnesses, but we have to treat patients. And so we focus more on the patient as a person. If we were to do this in other areas, whether it's in energy or the development of natural resources, well, there are ways to measure the impact on people, on communities, etc. So I think there are a number of examples that you could find in all of our sectors that are important for research. And the current framework involves public reporting, audits, other mechanisms, and when a researcher receives funding. So there's a motion seeking to create an independent organization that would be responsible for evaluating scientific policy federally. So if I understood you, it wouldn't be the best approach to use. You would prefer to take a look at the mechanisms and adjust them as necessary. Is that correct? Yes, that's effectively what I'm saying. We have a lot of mechanisms already in place, and we need to expand them in order to better assess the impact and the value of our research, the research funded by the government. And you've mentioned a number of things, but if there are things that you weren't able to mention, is there anything that you think that we should take a look at in our work? I'm not going to speak on behalf of the witnesses that appeared before me, but I have the privilege of working at Genome Canada.
Qu'ils appelaient Genomics et Société.
And we have a program called Genomics and Society. So its purpose was to assess the impact of these new genomic technologies in various sectors by taking a look at measures going beyond economic measures. That is to say, the impact on various sectors like agriculture, various markets, various communities, issues to do with the environment as well, legal, ethical, political, policy questions. These are all things that were part of this program. It's fairly unique. And Professor Chen, you've received federal funding. So do you have any suggestions to improve the existing accountability mechanisms according to your expertise?
Question. I believe there are already a host of accountability mechanisms in place right now across our funding landscape and in our granting councils. As an individual researcher, I have to submit reports, attest to financial reporting and end of project reporting. The institution has to attest as well to the responsible research that is conducted at the university, the responsible use of funds. So I believe there is already a host of reporting mechanisms and good governance processes in place.
Merci.
Thank you. Do I have any time left, Chair?
And now we will proceed to MP Beaulieu for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Première question serait pour Madame Morin.
My first question is for Dr. Morin. If we want to go beyond audits and really assess the public impact of investments, what kind of indicator for the social impact, including on Francophone communities, could be standardized and published annually? I'd like to have an answer to your question, but the work hasn't really been done because these aren't really the concerns that we have when we fund science and research and the development of technology. We take a look at the economic impact. So you said that you didn't think it was necessary to have an independent organization that would assess research funding, and you could also make a link between humanities and healthcare and biology. An overarching organization, you think that's not necessary? Thank you for your question. Well, we've already spoken a lot about this capstone agency, and it seems like our attention is to better coordinate everything. In my opinion, what I would envision should be based on what we already have, something we know how to assess. So to better recognize what's not done, I think we need to acknowledge what's being done and do so in a coordinated way. It shouldn't be siloed in the various funded organizations. That is to say, everyone's worrying about their own point of view. By bringing everything together, it will become more interdisciplinary, and that's the way to assess the impact on individuals, communities, institutions, our society. So that's the goal of having a capstone agency. But so you're not necessarily opposed to it. Well, we're just wondering whether it's necessary to create a new organization, to start from square one. And I don't really agree with this. So we're not saying that we're going to get rid of everything that is in place already, but I agree with you. What concrete measures would you propose to guarantee the vitality of Francophone research within the federal architecture mechanisms and follow-up approaches? Thank you for the question. We need to prioritize this objective, and then it would be fairly easy to measure So if we take a look at Francophone researchers who are making a funding request in French, and if they then publish their results in French, all this is possible to measure. And if there are any issues, then we can take a look at why they exist and what supports are necessary, what kind of incentives could be put into place. In my opinion, often choices are made when it comes to various types of research. If we want to have international collaboration, does it limit things to focus on Francophone colleagues? Or if we want to work with people who speak English from other countries, so we need to understand the issues to understand what support is necessary so that Francophone researchers can continue to choose to work in French in our system. I think there's a fairly broad consensus on the idea that research in French is underfunded. Researchers do their requests in English. So how can, and if we take a look at what's going on in Quebec, when it comes to federal funding for universities, there's 3 or 4 times more funding provided to Anglophone initiatives. And some people contest what I'm saying, but there are researchers who are telling us this. Thank you for the question. And we need to figure out whether enlightened decisions are being made or whether they're decisions being made by default. And in every case, in every discipline, we don't necessarily understand all the unique characteristics of the researchers who are making these choices, but there are certainly moments when support for research, if it's done in French, is lacking. So it may be necessary to strengthen the support provided, especially in minority language communities outside of Quebec, where they're even more dispersed with even fewer resources to do things in French. And they want to continue doing their work in French. And for Mr. Doyle, what guarantee can you provide so that Francophone small businesses have equitable access to the Technology Access Center and to federal programs? You can answer in English. Thank you for the question. Well, there's expertise like the Technology Access Centers in Canada. There are about 70, but 33 are in Quebec. So our model is available in Quebec. And so according to our data, the majority of businesses that we work with over the course of a year are businesses in Quebec. So there are expertise in Quebec, and there's also specialized expertise outside of Quebec. And there are centers in Alberta and BC that assist small businesses in Quebec by providing with them their expertise to help them commercialize their technologies.
Time is up. We will now proceed to MP Ho for 5 minutes. This is the start of our second round. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take a moment to move my motion. The motion was put on notice back on February 11th of this year. I believe members in this committee have had ample time to look it over, and copies are distributed at the start of the meeting. Should I read the motion again, or
No.
are we?
You would like to move this motion now?
I'd like to move it now.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Should I read it, or should we just move on?
Has
Move to
everyone seen it?
debate, or
Okay, that's fine. MP, have you seen this motion which MP Ho is moving? Okay, you're good? Okay, yes. Yeah, that's fine. MP Noor Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to speak to the motion that Mr. Ho has moved. We are generally supportive of the motion with one amendment that I would like to propose, which is that we strike number E, or letter E, from the motion. Other than that, and then therefore change the number from 5 meetings, obviously, to 4 to reflect that. Other than that, I would be very supportive of this motion.
We have an amendment. Is everyone in favor of the amendment moved by MP Noor Mohammed? Good. MP Boulieu? Are you okay?
Un peu mitigé, mais je m'aimerais rallier si le proposeur, lui, est prêt à l'enlever.
We have the motion as amended. Any debate? Okay, everyone is in favor of the motion as amended? Okay, the motion is adopted. Okay, thank you.
So I'll use my remaining time to ask a few questions. My first set of questions is for Professor Chan. It's good to have you here on this committee. As a U of T alum, I've seen firsthand the research process that U of T outputs every year. It really puts Canada on the map on the world stage when it comes to research. So, my question for you is Canada too focused on early stage research funding at the expense of scaling and commercialization? And in your view, what policies could be adopted to correct that imbalance?
Thank you for the question. It's always great to meet an alum. I think it's not a zero-sum game. I think we need to continue to support the early stage research, because that is what fills the pipeline with ideas, with technologies, with inventions that will then fuel the businesses and the products of tomorrow. I think if there's a perception that we don't do as well in the latter half of the pipeline, then I think we have to invest there more. But I don't think that means it should come at the expense of investments at the upstream.
Thanks, Professor Chan. I guess I'll ask the question again to Mr. Doyle. I mean, what ways can we fix that imbalance? We're seeing IP that's taxpayer funded being owned overseas ultimately. What are some ways that the federal government could change their policy so that research is outputted to ownership by Canadians and for Canadians?
Thank you for the question. Like I mentioned the patent box earlier, I think that might be a step in the right direction, but there are best practices from other jurisdictions that we may want to look at, where you're right, like our intellectual property, we have incredibly smart people doing some incredibly novel things, but that IP, when the company or the entity gets to a certain point, gets snatched up, either goes down south or across the pond, and then gets, through the technology readiness levels, commercialized and sold back to us as a finished product. Other jurisdictions put sort of hooks into the public funding of research projects where, if it's almost like the company runs a tab with the government, and as the government invests more and more in that technology development, should they decide to sell their company or take that IP elsewhere, whoever acquires them has to pay off that tab and then often a multiplier based on the future value of that. And those funds get reinvested into the companies who want to grow and scale in that country. And that's something we may want to explore as well.
Would you be agreeable to a policy where if that money gets offshored, that the recipients of that money would then have to pay it back to the government, or a portion of it back to the government?
I think that's absolutely the right approach, to be able to reinvest those funds that do come back into the companies who do want to stay and grow here in Canada.
Do I have any more time?
Yeah.
Oh, we still have a minute. Oh. So I guess my other question is, we've seen in previous committee meetings that there are hundreds, depending on how you calculate it, for Mr. Doyle, hundreds of different grant programs for seed and investment and commercialization funding, and hundreds of programs. I mean, do you see that fragmentation being in that the paperwork and the administration of those programs being a barrier? Do you think that maybe some consolidation of the bureaucracies could maybe make the operation of those funding more efficient and easier for businesses to navigate?
And thank you. One of the major pain points we hear from the companies we work with every year is exactly that, just the proliferation of programs at the federal and provincial levels, and asking for effectively the same piece of information 5 or 6 different ways depending on the funding program, and then timelines, not like the fiscal year of the program not aligned to the company's operating quarters, or they're looking a quarter ahead, not towards March 31, April 1. So it's just a bit of a disconnect at all levels, where you're right, there'd be efficiencies gained by sort of normalizing some of these items, where if the goal is to help companies commercialize in Canada and create wealth, some of those barriers like the administrivia might be one place to start.
That's all.
We will now proceed to MP McKelvey for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my first question is for Dr. Morin, or Morin. Morin?
Not a doctor, but Mohan.
Okay. So I do notice you have experience in bioethics and law. So I was just wondering, this is about governance, and we did talk about balancing academic freedom with mission-oriented research. And so I'm just wondering your thoughts around governance of new and emerging technologies. I know we always use AI as that example, but, I think there's others, including synthetic biology. So I was wondering maybe if you could speak to some of your recommendations in that regard.
Thank you for that question. And indeed, I think what we see in some fields is that there's been recognition early on that the new technology, emerging technology, would likely be very controversial. And the best way to address that, to understand what are the risks, what are the aversions, what values are at stake, does entail having not just the scientists sort of make those decisions as to whether to advance or not to advance, whether it's more beneficial or detrimental, scientifically speaking, but to see it from a perspective of societal values and to bring in those ethicists, other disciplines, sociologists can assist in these regards, all sorts of other experts that can help define to articulate the risks so that there can be a better understanding of trade-offs to advance or not with certain controversial technologies, and or to regulate them in such ways that they would remain very confined under oversight, and making sure that there's no trespassing of what societal willingness there is to try and advance. I think very oftentimes behind some of the controversial technologies, there's some real, in health, certainly, their lives at stake. And so I'm sure that there are often some willing patients who would want to see those advancements. And then we know that there are other individuals who are averse to certain approaches. So how do we bring that out to facilitate a consensus, or to facilitate a very, again, controlled, tightly regulated approach, so that we can make sure that there's no greater harm than necessary, but that if there's benefits to be gained, that we don't let those aside for too long, because when there are matters of health, illness, lives, I think oftentimes we're looking to find solutions to those conditions.
Thank you. And Mr. Doyle, you pointed out that you are an optimist. I heard you say that. I wrote it down. So I was just wondering maybe if you could speak to what you see as the opportunities in mission-driven research and in collaboration. What are those potentials for Canada to make its mark, and how in particular can colleges have a role in that?
Thank you for the question, and you're quite right. I am an optimist, positive mental attitude. I'm buoyed by the fact that there's so much demand for the services the Technology Access Centres are offering. The center has, each of the centres has an average wait list of 11 weeks of companies who want to innovate, want to do cool stuff in Canada, want to commercialize, create wealth for this country, and they just need an intermediary to help them out. And that role, that sort of scale, pilot scale that we play in, is complementary to the great work going on in the universities and government labs, and then we're sort of the de-risking validator for the private sector, who can either produce 1 million units of that innovative new technology, or may want to adopt it themselves to save some money on the shop floor, the bottom line. I think one of the coolest aspects, for sure, is that every project we do is partnered with industry or a community partner, and we have professional R&D staff, and they do their thing. But what I love is that it's a multidisciplinary team attacking the problem from every angle, and that the students benefit as well, both college students and university students, as being members of those teams. So they're gaining innovation literacy, innovation skills that they're going to acquire during their studies and have a competitive advantage in the labor market when they do graduate and go out, whether that's working with the company they partnered on the project or just being able to speak to some really tangible hands-on experience they have in a job interview. I think that's a really cool thing that we should be proud of, and it's complementary to the other sides of the spectrum, and we just need a bit more of it.
And Dr. Chan, can you maybe outline your thoughts? Today's study is very much on governance, and so if we are to better align around mission-driven research, like where do you see the opportunities around that, and how should we be governing that or making those decisions?
Yeah, thank you for the question. From my background doing interdisciplinary research, I think mission-driven research is a really important area for Canada to be investing in. The Tri-Councils fund the disciplinary work. I think we need to complement that with a new or reinvigorated approach to really think about mission-driven work. Everything that is complex in this world today is, you could argue, is mission-driven and strategic because it is so messy. AI, energy, precision therapeutics, all of this has a benefit to society to solve. In terms of how we govern this, I think it really takes a kind of collective approach to think about not just the disciplinary aspects, but to think about the ultimate impacts that doing this type of work has on all of society. I think it has to be a collective approach to governing this and making sure that the outcomes of this work benefit all Canadians.
Thank you. And with that, we will now proceed to MP Beaulieu for like 2.5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci. Question pour Monsieur Chan.
Thank you. A question from Mr. Chan.
Public.
What kind of public dashboard that could include success rates per language, per institution, per discipline should be published by a university to improve accountability and to align on the goals of the committee?
For the question, I hope you don't mind if I respond in English. My high school French is not very good. At the university, I'll give you one example. At the University of Toronto, we have many dashboards of the type that you're referring to that report on all of our funding from different sources of different types of areas and so on. So institutions do have this data. We report them in aggregate to respond to demonstrate how we are being successful in our research and how we are sharing this research in lots of different areas.
C'est bon. Puis à l'Université de Toronto.
And at the U of T,
Pour les francophones.
is there access for francophones to these tools in research?
All of the data, all of the research tools, all of the supports that are given to our faculty, our students, our researchers are available to our entire community.
C'est bon. Peut-être, question pour vous trois, mais Madame Morin.
So a question for all three of you, and Ms. Morin has already spoken on this. Do you agree with the feasibility of putting this kind of independent organization in place for accountability, for follow-up on scientific policies federally?
Oui, Monsieur Chan.
Thank you for the question. I think having an independent organization to evaluate and assess this data is a positive thing. I think we should be looking very critically at our research ecosystem, its successes, the areas where we need improvement. So I think anything that provides accountability, provides rigorous accounting for what we are doing is a welcome addition.
Merci. Monsieur Doyle.
Mr. Doyle?
En accord avec Professor Chan.
I completely agree with Professor Chan.
Qui est pas mal drôle.
A kind of funny and sad example is in the SRSNG high school program 3 or 4 years ago. When you do a funding request, the character limit.
Alors, c'est juste quelques années passées qu'ils ont.
Just a few years ago, they change the character limit to be 30% longer for Francophones because this is something that needs to be taken into consideration from the beginning.
We will now proceed to MP Baldinelli for 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Mr. Doyle, it's good to see you again, and thank you for being here. I've always appreciated the side of our scientific research, the applied research side, and the funding of colleges. Niagara College in my community is the #1 research college in all of Canada. So the work that Tech Access does, for example, is critically important. You say 6,000 businesses that you deal with on a year, and the whole notion of how you're able to turn applied research requests that come in from businesses into tangible outcomes. And that is to be appreciated, particularly as funding dollars are not as, they're very valuable. We're spending about $10 billion, and I would suggest we're not investing more into the college side, for example, to the degree that we should be. You had mentioned in your testimony about this notion of the patent box idea, for example. You talk about, companies that work with Tech Access in our college system retain 100% of the patents. So can you go further into your notion of the patent box idea?
No, I'd be happy to. Thank you for the question. It's great to be back here again. Our model, because we're relatively new to the game compared to university research, government research, is that the companies retain 100% of the intellectual property, and in exchange for that, it's a true collaboration. But we don't want to encumber them with a random, royalty stake or 3% equity stake kind of thing, where they're small companies trying to get their widget close to commercialization, get in front of investors, and we don't want to upset that. Trade-off being that whenever we can engage students and put them on the projects, we do. The patent box, and Canada's had a number of novel things over the years, the scientific research, experimental development tax credit, low corporate tax rates, that kind of thing, which were great and spurred things in the 70s, 80s, 90s, but the rest of the world caught up and surpassed us. And now I think it is worth looking to try to attract some of that back here or keeping the IP here. Stuff like a patent box where a company comes up with an idea, a novel idea, they register that intellectual property, they get their patent, and then any revenues derived from that going forward would be tax-free or at the lowest possible tax rate, very modest tax rate, to incentivize them to stay and commercialize here rather than just ship it abroad.
At the same time, should the government invest, and that person leaves the country and takes that IP with them, should those dollars that we've invested into that corporation come back to the taxpayers then?
I mean, as obviously a representative of Tech Access Canada, but at the end of the day, a taxpayer and a Canadian taxpayer, I think so. I mean, if they benefited from support from NSERC programs, NRC, IRAP, all these other leveraging support programs that are critically important to de-risk companies investing in R&D here, especially in the applied side closer to commercialization, I'd love to see whoever acquires them pay back that tab so it could be reinvested in companies who do want to grow and stay here and scale in Canada.
Last thing, on Friday night, they're going to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of Tsunami, the Southern Ontario Network for Advanced Manufacturing and Innovation. Niagara College is a lead on there. My colleague would like to know that McMaster University is the only university amongst the colleges that participate, and they do fabulous work in working with government, not only on the research side, but with FedDev, for example, from Southern Ontario, to advance those projects that are critically important to local businesses. And so that's why I think those ones that from the college level, that applied research is so valuable that we don't take advantage of.
Thank you. We will end this panel with MP Rana for 3.5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Chan, mechanical engineer?
On the industrial side, but yes, in the same department.
But I don't see your ring, actually.
My graduate training is in math. So not a...
All right, thank you very much. Your research background is in operations research and optimization. You think about how to make systems work better. If you were advising this committee on designing an accountability framework for federal research funding, what would you actually change about how the system measures whether public money is producing results?
That's a tough question, and just I didn't intend for that math comment to actually be humorous. So It's a very good question. It's a difficult question. I don't know that I can come up with a model on the spot, but I think what I would want to reiterate is that such a system needs to maintain the fundamental strengths that the current ecosystem has now, and then build on them. So, for example, the strength of our peer review system, which has independent researchers reviewing other people's work where they have no conflict of interest, assessing it based on the merits of research. I think that has to be an important aspect of it, making sure that the funding is used responsibly, making sure that ethics protocols are in place. All of that has to be done responsibly. I think we have all of the ingredients in our current ecosystem right now. I think we need the will to move towards a framework that will govern this type of mission-driven research.
Thank you. And Ms. Moran, do you think current accountability structures treat colleges-based research and university-based research on a level playing field?
I'm sorry, I may not quite have understood the question.
Like current accountability structures treat colleges-based research and university-based research at the same level, or are the system tilted in favor of one over the other one?
Certainly in terms of funding, there's more that goes through universities than through colleges. That would be accurate, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and you have several positions across the science and research landscape. Drawing on that experience, where do you see the biggest inconsistencies in how the three granting agencies handle governance and reporting? And would the capstone organization actually fix any of that?
Thank you for that question. I would not consider that there are significant inconsistencies. However, I do think that in having each of the councils operate legislatively in their own respective areas and in response to their respective communities, there are probably some economies of scales, even if I could use that term, that aren't being realized that could be through a capstone that would bring together some of the areas of work towards evaluations and other science policy areas where right now the work is more fragmented than I believe it needs to be, and would benefit from being better coordinated and aggregated together. So I think the greater sum of the parts through a capstone would probably be the likely to be the beneficial outcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
With this, this panel comes to an end, and on behalf of all the members of this committee, I would really like to thank all our three witnesses for appearing before the committee. And is it the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting? Okay. Thank you once again, and the meeting is adjourned.